but they're not necessarily mutually exclusive either. They can certainly be both, which the fact that the victims in this case, to the extent that we know, were all male, would certainly lead to certain conclusions. But Senator, this regulation to some extent has been in effect for the last 7 or 8 years. Thank you, members. I appreciate your time.
Are there other senators that seek to be recognized? Senator Miller is recognized first to speak for the bill, followed by Senator Argue, Senator Madison, and Senator Salmon to speak against the bill. Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just short and to the point, probably of all the 2,800 plus bills that we've seen introduced so far in this session, and of course there'll be no more, I'd say this would be among the top most important bills that we'll be making a decision on today as I speak to you. And the reason being, we're dealing with our children. The most important product that we have in Arkansas. Very heart-rending, and there's many opinions on both sides of the equation. And I'm not here to tell you that I'm any expert on the matter, because I'm certainly not. I've dealt with children quite a few years in my life, and loved everyone that I taught, and many that my wife taught. And they're dear to my heart. And we have passed legislation already and are in the process still of crafting some legislation that will help to fund good causes, to make good children, to educate our children. I submit to you today that none of those bills are as important as I think this bill is. The reason being the character and the emotion that is at stake with these children. And I know that the big issue is the constitutionality of it. I couldn't tell you. But I think it's so important that I'd like to see us pass this legislation. And when it gets tested in court, we'll get the answer to that. Meanwhile, we will keep our nose to the grindstone, trying to do what we all think is best for those children. I just ask you to give it really sincere consideration. Thank you.
Senator Miller has spoken for the bill. Senator Argue is recognized to speak against the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree, Senator Miller, this is an important matter, and you and I may disagree, but I hope and I know that in the end we share a common bond of concern for the best interest of our children, their welfare. But I think our choice today is, do we craft our public policy on prejudice and discrimination, or do we craft our public policy on the best professional judgments available to us, the best research available to us? The following professional groups, all dedicated to the best interest of children, child welfare. The following groups oppose this legislation: Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families, Arkansas Psychological Association, Arkansas Chapter of the National Association of Social Workers, the American Academy of Pediatrics, Child Welfare League of America, American Psychological Association, American Psychiatric Association, the National Association of Social Workers, the North American Council on Adoptable Children. All of those organizations committed to the best interest of children oppose this bill. And so here we are today. I believe if we pass this bill, then prejudice and discrimination will have trumped the best professional judgments available to us. Let's don't let prejudice and discrimination stand out for that. Let's stand above that. Let's cast a vote in opposition to this bill, a vote that in fact is the vote that defends the best interest of children. Thank you.
Senator Argue has spoken against the bill. Senator Hendren is recognized to speak for the bill. Senator Hendren.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hadn't really planned to come down and say much about this, but Bella Vista keeps coming up. And that's either in my district or Dave Bisbee's, because we separate, though we share that part of the state. In fact, probably some folks down here today from that neck of the woods, as they say. You know, we just passed a bill through here not long ago that dealt with a convicted sex offender that dealt with kids, I guess is a better way to say that. And we passed the bill, the House has passed it, now it's going to be signed. We had a guy that took care of our youngsters. And frankly, I don't know whether the guy's homosexual or not. The main thing that concerned me about it is these two little girls that he babysat for one day. He started giving them a bath and taking pictures. And we found out about it. He was part of the Savanaugh Literacy Council. We didn't know that before he had moved to Northwest Arkansas from Illinois that he was a convicted sex offender. So we entrusted him with our little kids, our little girls, or boys, what doesn't make any difference. And this guy got 8 years, convicted. And then he was turned right back to go the next day after the conviction back to the Sulphur Springs to be part of the community from which he came. But we fixed that, ladies and gentlemen, this session, we fixed that. That won't happen anymore. Now, that's not because I'm prejudiced against that fellow. In fact, I know his mom. I've known him for years, and I think a lot of him. And a lot of his mom. Matter of fact, he wanted free dinner on our radio station. We said, well, what does he do if he can't be here to take the dinner? And we gave it to his 80-year-old mom. And our heart goes out to her. But you know, we're still more responsible for those little kids, those two teenage girls, or I guess they were younger than that perhaps. But this Bella Vista thing, we're going to have to get in the middle of that. I know that Dave and I and Horace and others need to look into that when we get back and see what we can do to protect our youngsters. This is not going to be an easy vote. I guess some of us are called populists, and I frankly think that's what we ought to be when we represent people. And I think we need to go back, as some of us will and some of us won't, to ask folks to send us back down here next time to express their will. There are 70, 80, 90,000 people each one of us represent that cannot be here today. They cannot be outside that door telling you and me how to vote. They can't be sending in messages or sending us voicemails or emails on our computers. They just trust your and my good judgment on stuff like this. And we disagree perhaps personally on some of this stuff, but it's like some other stuff we looked at recently, or proposals, we could say, is that I believe on things like this, we need to very carefully consider what our folks would do were they down here. We play a song on the radio station, I wonder what old Roy would do standing in my boots. That's Roy Rogers for some of you younger guys, Jim. What would old Roy do? Well, he would do what was right. Well, I believe this with all my heart. You can go back, those of us who run in 2 years, and you can go before your public and say, you know, I could be criticized for some of this, but I took a step that I think you would have taken if you were standing in my boots down there at the well of the Senate, or sitting in that seat when you cast your vote today. So I ask you to vote for this bill.
Senator Hendren has spoken against the bill. Senator Madison. I'm sorry. Senator Hendren has spoken for the bill. Senator Madison, you threw me a curve there when I was thinking about Roy Rogers.